So I would say Governor Patterson really deserves a lot of thanks for the work that he's done with the historic legislation. So let me give you some background on the Business Diversification Act. 4 months after the Small Business Task Force issued its report, the MWBE Task Force, which my president Paul Williams had the privilege to chair, presented a final report to the governor. And the report also offered specific recommendations to level the playing field for minority and women businesses in the areas of underwriting, so that's investment banking, financial, legal, and other professional services. Just as important, the task force fashioned legislation from the final report that they issued to the governor that was signed into law by the governor in July, and that is the Business Diversification Act. So that's where it started. The Act has an extraordinary set of new requirements, and it's separated into 4 different bills. They're all connected, but they really formulate some giant steps forward for minority and women-owned businesses. So the governor's program bill, number 297, that's the first bill, raises the cap on discretionary purchases that a state agency can award to minority, women, and small businesses to $200,000. Previously, it was $100,000. So that means that, subject to agencies' internal controls, these procurements are, they're competitive, but, we can use our discretion in terms of who we would like to award the contracts to when it comes to minority and women-owned businesses. The second bill expands contracting opportunities for public authorities, granting increased opportunities for MWBE participation. So in addition, the law requires that the procurement guidelines for each state public authority include the designation of 1 or more senior staff to oversee the authority's minority and women business program, and requires that the procurements be conducted to achieve the authority's minority and women participation goals to the maximum feasible extent. So a lot of you might not know this, all state agencies and authorities are supposed to have an affirmative action officer. A lot of times it wasn't someone who was senior, and so within this legislation, each agency has to have a senior level person responsible for minority and women business inclusion. So it's going to, we're going to be holding agencies accountable for goals as well as meeting them and exceeding them. The third bill expands the strengths of the state's program for MWBE contracting and authorizes a new, more thorough disparity study before the provisions relating to the MWBE program expires in 2014. This includes an in-depth review of contractors' hiring and promotional practices. This law will also create the position of a Chief Diversity Officer to oversee the MWBE program and diversity issues in the workforce from within the governor's executive chamber. So if any of you followed the news on Governor-elect Cuomo's new senior staff, he's already appointed who his Chief Diversity Officer is going to be. Currently the Chief Diversity Officer is a woman by the name of Charlotte Hitchcock, an African-American woman. And so she's very senior, reports directly to the governor, and so I'm happy to say that the new governor has already, he knows that this is something that's important and will be, making sure that there's someone at the highest level looking into this. The last bill is the Emerging Investment Managers Bill, and that addresses entities that are not executive agencies, but which control large pools of money for investment. That's the Comptroller, the State Insurance Fund, the Deferred Compensation Board, and this law will provide emerging investment managers, mainly minority and women-owned investment managers, the ability to invest with minority and women financial institutions and to adopt a strategy that motivates investments in underserved regions of the state. So taken together, the work of the small business and the MWBE task forces will have the effect of tearing down the walls that previously kept smaller firms out of the loop in doing business with the state. So at a more micro level, we're finding that business diversification isn't just a matter of altruism or wanting to do the right thing. it's good business in New York. And so opening state contracts and procurements to small, minority, and women-owned businesses opens up a new world of ideas and innovation that has largely been untapped in the state of New York. So prior to me coming to the Dormitory Authority, DASNY had a good reputation in terms of diversity. I can't say that for a lot of the other state agencies, but DASNY did. And always opened opportunities to small businesses. Yet I knew that more could be done, and our president, Paul Williams, he knew that the greatest area for potential growth was in regard to underwriting, financial services, and professional services, and that's why we created a new division that I run at the authority. So we really became like the laboratory for recommendations that came from all these different task forces. So at DASNY, the implementation of the recommendations is already creating very significant opportunity. So DASNY exceeded its goal for MWBE utilization in construction and commodities in 2009. We had more than 23% of contracts awarded to minority and women-owned firms. This translated into more than $219 million spent with minority and women-owned businesses across the state. These are not just statistics, this is real money paid to real businesses. DASNY has also sponsored OSHA training sessions, green and LEED training. We created a $3 million surety bond and capital access fund to help smaller MWBE construction contractors develop their businesses and allow MWBE prime contractors to bid on larger projects. But let me give you an example of just one of an example of how DASNY's approach to public construction can seamlessly integrate not only MWBE contracting goals, but diversity initiatives in a broader way. Let me tell you about a project that we're doing up in Harlem. Harlem Hospital. Has anyone seen the new Harlem Hospital construction? It's very nice. So it's a major modernization project of $257 million that includes not only the construction of a new patient pavilion, but an opportunity to meet our MWBE procurement goals and set goals for hiring from the surrounding community. At Harlem Hospital, which was recently featured in the New York Times supplement on the New Harlem Renaissance, we exceeded our MWBE goals with a total of 36% MWBE participation. So that represents over $34 million in contract awards. We encourage joint ventures between minority firms and non-minority firms. We believe that these joint ventures add both experience and capacity to the minority and women-owned businesses. It gives them the added tools to expand, create, and provide job opportunities in public and private construction markets. In addition, we initiated a comprehensive community outreach and referral program for residents of the Harlem community. We administered by the construction management firm of McKissick & McKissick. I'm not sure if many of you know. They're the oldest black-owned construction company in the country, over 100 years old. And as a result of our efforts, we were able to recommend candidates to our contractors, the unions, and other New York City-based employers. In this economy, that's an idea that's attractive to a lot of communities. Also during the past year, DASNY has made great strides in my division under the financial and professional services area. This past year, DASNY paid out over $5.2 million. By considering joint ventures, we expanded opportunities in the area of accounting. Today at DASNY, we have a MWBE accounting firm, and they partnered up with one of the big four accounting firms, and they're serving as the outside auditor for DASNY to perform our annual audits for the next 3 years. That's never been done before. In September, our board approved the appointment of law firms for 7 different legal panels. It was the most comprehensive legal RFP in the authority's history. I went through over 90 proposals. It was a lot of work. And the intent was to create as many opportunities as possible for qualified law firms, both large and small. Of the 59 firms that we selected, 15 were minority and women-owned law firms, and 9 were joint ventures between minority law firms and non-minority law firms, which was first of its kind. This also includes the designation of a panel that we called the Emerging Law Firms Panel. These are small law firms that will in most cases get their chance to work with a state authority for the first time. So these are qualified law firms. They just never had an opportunity to do state work, so we're going to really coach them through the process. We're particularly pleased to announce that DASNY has a new panel of bond counsel. These are the law firms that help us issue those $7 billion worth of bonds that I referenced. Of the 8 selected, 3 included joint ventures or co-counsel arrangements with MWBE law firms. So for the first time in well over a decade, MWBE law firms will be involved in bond counsel work at DASNY, which is really impressive. Last but not least, this past year, MWBE underwriting firms, which are investment banks, earned more than $4.8 million from DASNY bond transaction. So this represents an increase from 4% of fees paid in 2007 to more than 28% in 2009. And in 2010, we're well above 30%. We've done a great job. So that's really a 7-fold increase in less than 2 years. In the last 2 years, DASNY has brought to market 14 state-supported debt transactions, 9 of which included a minority or woman-owned financial firm as the senior or co-senior manager. That track record is nothing that you can see really across the state. In October, we were very successful and completed the largest bond transaction ever handled by a minority-owned firm in New York State. It was a $1.3 billion personal income tax bond issuance handled as sole lead manager by a firm called M.R. Beal and Company. So it was very historic. So I hope you can see that we're trying to do our part at the Dormitory Authority when it comes to the utilization of minority and women-owned companies. So what does all this mean to small businesses like yours? It means opportunities for those who are prepared to seek it. Make no mistake, New York State has ways to go before we can say the playing field is truly leveled. As those of us in state government remain committed to that end, we need your help. It's imperative that each of you participate in your own empowerment, and you guys already took the first step by being a part of an organization like this. Familiarize yourself with the Business Diversification Act, with the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund, with the tools that have been put in place to help your growth as a small business. As someone who has worked for small businesses prior to joining the Dormitory Authority, I know it takes determination and perseverance to become successful. I also know at the end of the day that success is one of those most satisfying experiences in life. In this economy, I know it won't be easy, but consider this. New York State spends upwards of $70 billion a year to purchase everything from legal services to hand sanitizer. Why shouldn't you be a part of that and make your business grow and prosper? If you're interested in doing business with the Dormitory Authority, I've brought some brochures. I have business cards as well. I want to thank Marilyn Silverman and the leadership of the NACC for having me here today. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, and all the best to you in the new year.